G'day everybody and welcome to my Aussie garden kitchen. My name's Daz and today I'm going to be telling you what I like to dehydrate and what I don't. And for beginners out there, I'm going to be giving a few basic tips on dehydrating and telling you of some really cool uses for your dehydrated items. Let's get straight into it because I really want to share some of my favorite things and what I do with them. So first of all, tomatoes. I love dehydrating tomatoes. Now what I like about these is that not only can you store a lot of tomatoes in a small space by dehydrating them and shrinking them down, but you can actually take them in this form and break them up and crumble them into, say, a salad or maybe a pasta dish, and you have fine crumbles of intense flavor. It's really cool. And that's something that I really like about dehydrating, is that it's not only just about storage and putting things away for long term, for instance, but it's also flavors and textures that you can play with. And that's something you can do with tomatoes, because when they dehydrate, they intensify in flavor. So why not take advantage of that strong flavor? And for instance, I'll take these and I'll pop them onto hamburgers or a steak sandwich or a pizza, and the dehydrated tomato will go on top of a layer of mayonnaise or a burger sauce or even a salsa, and it'll start to slightly hydrate with that moisture, and then that gives me a slightly chewy texture of that dehydrated tomato along with that intense flavor. It's such a burst of flavor that's well worth trying, and I really do recommend with things like tomatoes, have a play around and try them in this form. Don't just think of them as, oh, this is being stored away and I'm going to rehydrate them later for something, which you do and which you can. But yeah, have a go and see what you think, because it's quite amazing what you can do. And don't forget, you can also grind them down and make an amazing powder and use that powder in so many different things. If you don't mind, I'd just like to take a moment to explain to you about this collaboration that this video is a part of. So Dianne The Canning Nana has brought a whole bunch of channels together, and what we're doing is we're talking about things that we like to dehydrate and things that we don't, but we're also doing videos, some of us, where we talk about things that we like to can and don't can. So if you go down to my description, I'll give you a link to Dianne's site and you'll be able, or channel, and you'll be able to check out other people's videos as well as my other video where I discuss canning, what I like canning and what I don't. And in my case, I've given a few tips in there for beginners as well. Now, Dianne has also said that she's going to be giving away little gifts here and there to people that make meaningful comments on the videos. So do watch our videos and comment meaningfully, because you never know, Dianne might be reading your comments and getting in contact and giving you a small gift just for watching our videos and commenting. Now, jalapenos are one of my next favorite ones, and I wanted to mention those after the tomatoes, because quite similar to the tomatoes, I use them in different ways as well. Again, not just storing them away as a dried product, but these here, picking some out and crumbling them into, say, a salad, or crumbling them onto a meal. You've got those little chewy bites of jalapeno with that little bit of, or a little kick of burn. It's fantastic. And again, don't just think of them as something you're storing away. Get them out and actively use them. Again, burgers, steak sandwiches, on top of a pizza. Take them out, sprinkle them on in this form, or crumble them up with your fingers. It's fantastic. And again, grind them down and make them into a powder. And you can use the powder in, say, mayonnaise mixes, and just put it into a salad and put it through the salad if you don't want those chunks. But very importantly, if you grind down chili peppers, jalapenos, things like that, wear a mask, maybe have the windows open, because stuff like this, it's going to burn the old nostrils if you go doing it in a confined space and pretty close up. Okay, so my favorite thing to dehydrate is not here. I don't have any. So, excuse me while I shoo away a fly. So, it's onions, onion rings in particular. So what I'll do is I'll slice onions and then put those into the dehydrator and dehydrate them and make them into onion rings. No deep frying, no oil and additives and stuff like that. Just straight out onions in the deep fryer, and I tell you what, you have the most amazing onion rings that are just totally natural onion. And because you've dehydrated them, you've intensified the flavour, and you actually bring out the sweetness, and they've got a real sweet taste to them. You just have to try dehydrated onion rings in your burgers and steak sandwiches. Drop them into a salad again. As you can see, I've got a theme going here with burgers and steak sandwiches and salads. But really, dehydrating is great when it comes to different foods like that. But obviously, when we get to the vegetable part, we can talk about stews and soups and stuff like that as well. But yes, the onion rings, I highly recommend that you try dehydrating the onion rings and see what you think of them yourself. They're fantastic, but maybe you have a packet of chewing gum afterwards, because the old breath can be quite strong with dehydrated onions. Now, next thing I'd like to move on to is, here we go, mixed veg. Mixed veg is one thing you just have to do, because you've got an absolute variety of vegetables. You can't go wrong. You've got so many different vitamins and minerals in here with all those different vegetables. So you've got variety of vegetables, variety of vitamins, variety of minerals. Now, you will lose some nutrition in dehydrating, but really, doing it like this is fantastic. It's put away, it's shelf stable, and look at that. That is actually quite a lot of vegetables that's going to last quite a while. And we have quite a few jars that we put away of mixed vegetables, because these are great for long-term storage. And speaking of long-term storage, if you see here, we've got an oxygen absorber. So what I like to do for my long-term storage, say maybe 6 months or more, is I'll put an oxygen absorber in just to keep that nice and airtight or vacuum sealed. It's going to last quite a long time, but do remember that when using oxygen absorbers, I'm having trouble saying that word, when using oxygen absorbers, please remember not to have 10%, over 10% moisture in the things that you're keeping in the jar. You have to keep under 10% to keep it safe, because you don't want moisture in there with the oxygen absorber and then any nasties starting to form on the food in the jar. So do research it when using something like an oxygen absorber with your long-term items, and just keep in mind that I'm pretty sure it's 10% and under that you really need to watch out for. I should also mention that with mixed veggies, what I like about them too is that we'll keep an eye out at the supermarkets for when they go on sale. And when they're on sale, and even if there's maybe a bargain batch that's being discounted for any reason, we'll grab them, we'll bring them home and dehydrate them. And the beauty of getting frozen veggies and dehydrating them, the ones from the supermarket, is that generally, in most cases, they should be already blanched. Now, if you don't know what blanched means, it's basically where you'll get fresh vegetables and, or even fruits, but we'll stick with vegetables. You drop fresh vegetables into the water and you par-cook them, take them out, drop them into iced water to stop that cooking process immediately. That way, you've got some beautiful vegetables that are going to keep their colour. They're mostly cooked and they're ready to go. And when it comes to dehydrating, look at that. They're pretty much done, and all you've really got to do is put them into your final product and rehydrate them, and away you go. Mixed veggies, it's a favourite of mine, and I think personally it's a must-have in the pantry. Green peas, you've got to have green peas stored away. You can store so many of them dehydrated like this. Again, I like to use them frozen from the supermarket. If I'm growing green beans and green peas, for instance, at home, I'd rather eat them fresh. I don't like to dehydrate those. If I've got a surplus, by all means, or if we are lucky enough to find a surplus of fresh ones somewhere cheap, certainly we'll grab them and dehydrate them. But generally, again, I'll look out for deals in the supermarket, my wife and I, and away we go. We keep these stocked up. Long-term storage, again, oxygen absorber in the container, and away you go. Now, just while I'm talking about the dehydrated peas, I'll show you this. Methods of storing dehydrated items, and one method is to use Mylar bags. And look at this. This is green peas. vacuum sealed in a Mylar bag, and you won't be able to see it, but here I've got an oxygen absorber inside, and looking at the label and the date, these ones are about 14 months old, and look at that, it's like a brick. Hear that? It's sealed really nicely, and believe me, when I open that, they're going to be fine, and you just rehydrate them. So when it comes to storing dehydrated items, you've got jars like this one, for instance. This one here is my everyday use type of supply of corn, for instance. I've got another one stored away, and that will be in jars like this with an oxygen absorber, keeping it vacuum sealed for as long as I can. Other methods of storing is to use food saver bags, and again, I've got an oxygen absorber in this bag, and if you'll notice, I've got paper in here. So the reason for that is that when you're dehydrating items, they're going to be quite hard and have sharp edges. And with the food saver bags in particular, there is a chance that they will actually pierce the plastic and ruin your saved products if you store them over time. So what I like to do is get some, say, baking paper or maybe some lunch bags, paper lunch bags, and get a sheet that's twice as long as the bag I'm going to use. Put the sheet in, fold it back out, and then put the food in, vacuum seal it, and then that way you've got an extra layer of protection between the food and the plastic in the bag, and that stores nicely. And that's mixed veggies, and as you can see, it's like a brick. This one here that's 14 months old as well. And as you can see, the seal is fantastic on it. It's rock hard. You can see that vacuum's worked really well. And there's 1 kilo of mixed veggies. Pounds I'll put on the screen right now. And say there's an emergency, there's a bushfire or something, and what you could do was have a bunch of these thrown into a bag, and look how light they are for that quantity compared to throwing a bunch of jars like this and the weight of the jar. So we actually do have a bag that's ready to go in case of emergencies. And we have packages the size of this. I make up little packages like this. As you can see, there's no paper. These are from when I first started vacuum sealing. But these are sort of 1 mil type packages, and they're light as. You could put a whole bunch of these in a bag, and you could have a week, 2 week supply of food that doesn't weigh a thing. And as long as you've got water, you've got nutritional food ready to go that's pretty much cooked. It's fantastic. It really is the way to go. Now, the other thing I love to do with dehydrating is to turn things into powders. Here, for instance, is my pumpkin powder. I've got a video on my channel where I actually make this, and it's fantastic. With these powders, for instance, the pumpkin powder, you could call it a pumpkin flour. You can drop this into bread mixes, scone mixes, biscuit mixes. You can drop it into soups. You can make a soup with this, put it into stews, you name it. There's so many things you can do once you have these powders. So I do recommend looking into grinding down dehydrated foods and making powders. You can do it with fruit. So for instance, this is a lemon powder, and here I've got an orange powder. Look at this orange powder. I'll just move the lemon. Look at this orange powder. Can you see the color there? It's so vibrant, and when you open these containers, the smell is incredible. Now, actually, I've got a video, I think, on this as well. But what I do recommend is that when doing, say, lemon and orange or a lime powder, try to only use the rind and not the white pith. And that way, the pith it's slightly bitter, and you don't want that in your product. So if you can, I certainly do prefer to use just the rind, dehydrate them, grind them down, and make the most wonderful powders that are ready to go. And not only do I use these powders in baking, but the lemon powder, for instance, I love to drop that into, say, a black tea or cola. I love to have lime powder or lemon powder, just a spoon of it dropped into a cola and stir it in. It's so refreshing, it's awesome. So powders, I do recommend. And as I said earlier, when doing powders, and it's going to be hot chilies, jalapenos, for instance, just remember to have a mask and have some air in the room because that stuff's going to burn. There's not too much that I don't like to dehydrate. Broccoli is one that I've got a bit of a strange relationship with it. I initially didn't like dehydrating broccoli because the heads are fine. The heads work really well, but I found the stalks to be woody. Now, over time, I think I've discovered that what's happened with me is that it's the type of broccoli that I've used. I was using a sprouting broccoli that I grow here myself, and I think possibly that variety of broccoli, because it's got a bit of a longer stalk, and I like to keep a bit of a longer stalk on it, maybe the stalks were a bit woody when they were dehydrating, whereas the heads were fine. But I have found that having other types of broccoli, I think it's called a Waltham, if I've got that right. It's a variety here in Australia, which is your more traditional fat head of broccoli. I have found that when I dehydrate that, the stalks are not as woody, but still, yeah, I'm a little bit undecided on dehydrating broccoli. Having said that, I still make sure that I have it dehydrated and stored away, because there's just times when you don't have it, and dropping this into soups and things like that, it's fine. I can tolerate it. But as a side dish, yeah, I'm a bit iffy. I'm still undecided on broccoli. I'm sure others have had great success, and maybe it's just me, but broccoli is one that I'm on the fence about. I don't think there's too much more that I'm not keen on dehydrating. I would have to say that bananas, I did in my very early days try to dehydrate bananas because I wanted banana chips, and I thought it was just a matter of slicing them and getting them into the dehydrator, but no, that came out quite awful, and I'll never do that again. Fresh berries, such as raspberries and blackberries, dehydrating them is fine if I'm going to make a powder. I love having the powders from the berries. I would not use them dehydrated like I would with the tomatoes and the jalapenos, for instance, where I can sprinkle them on foods and eat them. I find that dehydrated berries are just too fibrous and not that pleasant in that form. Rehydrating them, obviously, they're okay, but they're mushy, and maybe if I was making a puree later on, that's fine. But berries, yeah, I'm not that really keen on dehydrating my berries. So there you go, that's what I like to dehydrate and what I don't. If you go into my channel, I've got a playlist on dehydrating, and you'll see other things that I dehydrate and can, and ways I go about it. Also, don't forget to please check out the other videos in this collaboration. There's been a lot of hard work going into other people's videos. And of course, if you check out this video right here, this is my video where I share with you what I like to can and what I don't, and also a few tips in there for beginners about canning. So I do appreciate you being here as always. Thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye for now.